Okay. Hello, hello Riga, hello world, whoever's listening and watching to us. We are streaming from Polish Paradise and we'll be presenting you some Polish photobooks. My name is Franek Ammer and I'm working for Photo Festival in Łódź. And today with me here is Michał
from Kraków Photobooks.
And together we'll present you a selection of photobooks. We are currently preparing it for our Polish Paradise presentation, kind of outdoor installation that we will be showing in Nida in September during the photographic symposium, in Toulouse during the Manifesto Festival, and also in Kaunas during Photobook Fair. So we are still working on this selection, and our task was to prepare for today few of the books from this selection, to tell you about them, to explain how the authors, how Polish photographers work with a specific team. And the team we selected is, the team we follow is...
We decided to find Polish photographers that are looking at countries and problems abroad. Because 2 years ago we had this team about Poland, and we decided to switch it and see how we see other countries. Maybe I will also come back to Polish Paradise and tell you a little bit more what it is, because it's an informal union of 3 Polish photography festivals: Photo Festival in Łódź, TIFF Festival in Wrocław, and Kraków Photomonth, obviously in Kraków. Yeah, and we decided to join our forces to promote Polish photography abroad.
Yeah, thank you for this introduction. Of course, I forgot about it. And we are really happy, and we're very thankful to Riga Photomonth for this invitation and for this opportunity to stream here together, connecting our channels, and maybe hopefully reach the bigger audience, the audience from Riga and maybe from other places. And we selected, as Michał said, we focused on the photobooks that are created by Polish authors, but talk about other countries. So we'll talk about how other countries are presented by Polish photographers, how they picture political, social, and historical issues of other countries, and also how being Polish author maybe influences the way these problems and these countries and these or some specific themes related to the world are represented. And each of us prepared a small selection of books. We'll tell about 4 or 5 books, and hopefully it will be kind of a discussion, and we'll a bit sometimes juggle and ask each other questions. And this is something that we didn't rehearse, so also you have to take it into consideration that we are a bit experimenting with the form. And we decided to show you only the table and the books. We think this is the most important thing here. And you won't see our faces, maybe next time, but the books are the most important, and it's also important how we interact with the book. And also Michał will focus a bit on the form of the books. We'll talk also about this. So Michał, can you tell us what did you bring today
Sure.
with you?
Let's share some love for Photobooks. First thing I brought here, it's Alexander from Michał Szarek, as you can see. It's a book about Macedonia and complicated problems that happen there. Yeah. Next one is a book 1141 by Michał Łuczek and Philip Springer. Michał Łuczek is a photographer from Sputnik Photos, and it's about city of Spitak in Armenia. Sorry. Here we go. Then we have Subterranean River from Łukasz Rusznica. It's about Japan. Here we go.
Or not, as Łukasz says, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, and last but not least, it's more zine than a book from Karol Grigoruk. It's about Thailand. You see, it is huge. Goes here.
So as you can see, we have different forms here of the books, and I'll bring some more to the table. So I brought this selection of 5-6 books, and we have some more around the table to eventually bring them to give you more context about some specific books. I brought with me a book that is maybe not very well known. It's made by 2 students from Fine Art Academy in Łódź, in my hometown, Jan Kazimierz Barnaś and Wojciech Kamerys. The title of the book is No Man's Land. It's a beautiful book. I will show you it a bit more and tell you about the story, about how they work on the book. I brought 2 books by Maciej Jeziorek, and these are 2 really crazy books. One of them is called 317 Days to Mars, and the other one is called Message. Both of the books are about modern India and his travel to India. And another book, it's a book from Jacek Fota, Some Things Are Quieter Than Others, and it's a book about his travel to States. As you can see, as you will see, it's very close to this mythical, almost mythical travel to from the east to west of the States, and it's beautifully pictured here. I brought also a book, a zine. I don't really exactly know how to call it. It's called S21. It deals with a bit more serious thing, and it's about the prison in Cambodia, prison that served it was created by the regime of Red Khmers of Pol Pot, and it's I will show you it in a moment. It's quite it's not drastic, but it brings memory about something very tragic in the history of Cambodia. And the next book is a book that I have in my hands today for the first time. It had its premiere like, I don't know, 2 months ago?
Even a month, I guess.
Or even a month.
It's really fresh.
I know the project. I'm a big fan of it. We were presenting it during the photo festival in Łódź last year. It's a book by Piotr Zbierski, his newest book that was just published this year. It was basically launched online. It's already on sale, but it was launched online. And also, if you will be interested, you can see Piotr website and his YouTube, because during the launch they also played a beautiful concert with visualization, with slideshow, with 8mm movies. So it was quite an online event. So I have this book today for the first time in my hands, and we'll talk about this book, and maybe we'll go back to the previous book of Piotr that was called Push the Sky Away. Maybe talk about some differences. If we'll get enough time, we'll see. And the last one, and I think it might be also kind of a surprise even for the author of this book, Łukasz Różnica. We have other book on the table, the newest book of his. And basically, this is a book that was published only in 10 copies. And we'll maybe use it as a kind of comparison. But what is important in this book, in the story that Łukasz is talking, is something that I want to maybe discuss a bit. Discuss a topic of being a tourist, but a specific tourist, a bad tourist, the one that not necessarily goes or looks where he or she should look. So I will try to deal a bit with this theme of being this bad tourist. And so, what we start with?
I don't know, but this problem you brought, it's very important for me, because when I was trying to find some books talking about things abroad, I will maybe show here Mark Power book about Poland. So it's something totally different. And I realized that in our archives in Foundation for Visual Arts, we have a large collection of books that are really mature, but are about either about some smaller regions in Poland, or either people from abroad coming to us and trying to portray Poland. And I haven't found that much photo books about places that aren't very known to us, and the problems that aren't in our neighborhood. So yeah, that's why I brought this, but just to tell you, so I believe this is a relatively new problem, this photography from abroad. And those old books, as you can hear, are pretty fresh, because it's like 2 years ago, max, and something really new as Piotr Zbierski.
Yeah, there's a fact that we brought some books that are no older than, I think maybe 2 not, but maybe 4 years or 5. This is the maximum that we go in the time. And yeah, it's interesting thing that you brought. I think it's developed in the last this last 5-10 years, this going abroad and picturing other places. But this, I think, this interest of other places was always there in the Polish photography. Maybe it's also that maybe the first books that were published, the photo books that were published in Poland when this kind of photo book boom started, were more focused on our backyard.
Yeah.
But I think the first one, if we start from Mark Power, I think the first ones to try to go a little bit abroad and see how how our neighbors are, where the Sputnik collective.
So let's hide this one.
Yeah. Where the Sputnik collective, and this is not especially I decided not to bring especially their books to the table and talk about them, because I think that Sputnik is quite known, and if you follow photography world and you follow photobook world, for sure you know their books. But I brought them here because I think this is like important thing to mention, that they kind of started to this process of going out, looking around to see how our neighbors are, to go east, and I think that because they also teach photography, they have really big influence on Polish authors, young authors. I think they also encourage a lot of people to go abroad and find some new topics, and also look at other countries, so it can bring some knowledge about us. I think this is kind of important thing if we talk about the Sputnik Photos collective. And I also, which is really important, they also collaborate with photographers, like in Belarus, like in case of this in this book. So they are not only showing their perspective, but I also invite photographers from the countries they go to, photographers or even writers, like in the case of the Icelandic book, to work with them. So you start from this idea of going out and picturing what's outside. What would be the first book that you would like to talk about?
Maybe something complicated, and I brought it here because I believe this is the photo book as a medium is really good when it comes to explaining complicated ideas, problems. For example, I will have an example here.
This is Alexander by Michał Siarek.
It would be really hard to give us such a detailed info on an exhibition. As you can see, it starts with a letter.
So maybe can you tell us a bit about maybe not the whole history, because the whole history behind this book and it's quite complicated, but maybe just tell us generally what Alexander is about.
For me, it's all about the form, because as you can see, maps here and all the details that you can find, it's like you have more text here than just the photos sometimes. And it's very hard to focus on an exhibition and read all of this and understand it and relate to it. This is a book you can work with, and as you can see, this little detail here even suggests that you can come back to some part, you can relate, you can find some more info, because this project is all about research. And Michał spent so many years there trying to figure this complicated problem out and then communicate it to us.
And so maybe I will explain a bit. So since I think since I know Michał, he was working on this project, so it took him really like, I don't know, 8-10 years to finish this. And he was really close to what happened in Macedonia. And at some point, I mean, Macedonia is the country that was created from after one of the countries that developed from Yugoslavia. And from the beginning, it was a country that was searching for its identity. And this identity was they were trying to find it in very ancient in ancient history, in the history of Alexander and his father Philip II. And so they kind of place themselves as the descendants of the great Alexander, which also, as you know, the Greeks, they say that Alexander was basically Greek, and they tried to build a national identity around it, and they did it by naming the country Macedonia, which created a lot of controversy and kind of conflict with Greece, that even blocked their participation in NATO, NATO. Yeah, this is the correct English name, sorry. So that was the one thing. The other thing that they started to change the architecture of the capital by adding elements, classical elements like this kind of columns and stuff like this. Also by creating monuments, and there's this famous monument. It's called the Warrior on a Horse, but so it's not named Alexander, not to bring too much controversy, but everybody knows that it's about Alexander the Great. So this is like very, and also in this is like one layer of this book, and another one is the Macedonian government that and the tapes that came at some point and showed how corrupted and how cynical this government is also in the project of making the Macedonia the country of the Alexander.
You can also imagine how detailed it is, because Michał was accused for spying there, and if I remember it correctly, he was held in prison for some time there, or he had some problems like this. So that shows his engagement and how detailed he made this.
So we started from the quite, as we said, complicated form that includes the texts. These are reprinted emails between officials. There are also printed the tapes, the dialogues from the tapes. There are beautiful documentary photos, and also each of the photo has a detailed description of the place and of the plot that the photographer is talking about. So, and also I think it's important to say that it's one layer, it's a book, but there is even more, and it's a website that kind of even expands the book more. Yeah. So this is really interesting project that really took a lot of time to develop, and I think Michał went really deeply into the topic.
This little touch here from the design perspective, red paint, I like it.
I like it, but it's also, if you, I think this is something that was not designed to be, but it's also, it kind of make your fingers red and your book, but it's sometimes this kind of even small things that were not designed to be there. They add something unique to the book, and I also really like it.
Because, for example, I treat it a little bit like a workbook. So as you said, it's like nice little touch that adds
Mhm.
unexpected one.
Mhm. Okay, so we have Alexander. You started from the like quite high level of complication. So maybe I will go to something simpler, maybe something that also brings us a bit of fun into um, uh, into reading, into the process of handling the book. So as I told you, this book is called 317 Days to Mars. And the title comes from the 317 days of first journey of Vasco da Gama from Europe to India. But we have also this Mars thing, and I think this will be clear in the moment. When we go into the book, I will show you first the cover. I think the design is really it's really important in this in the process of play. So we have this beautiful poster that you can watch in 3D glasses even. You have this orbits of the planets, and so we have this a link to the journey to another planet. There are some data about the trips to um, um, about some space trips, and this book is a really a trip to another planet. Even it talks about modern India. But the approach, as I told you, of the photographer was to make us float in the space, spin around, and this book is designed to be constantly spinned around to see all the photos. You can't just like put it in front of you, and there's a lot of going. There are no margins. It's full of pictures, and constantly you have to play with the way you keep it, and so it shows how the energy of the city. I think the book was mainly made in the photos were mainly shot in New Delhi, so it shows the chaos of the city, the energy behind it, also kind of absurds that you can find in the city, and I think this is the way. It's very important also to think about India as the country that's image is kind of taken over by people from outside. So basically, you can, and it's quite a colonial approach. No, if you can also say it. So one way is either to break it and go into deeper analysis um, and try to really give the inhabitants of the country their own way to speak about themselves, or you can play with these cliches and say that this what you see, it's not really something real, it's more something that you imagine about India, and it's something that you experience through the images. That it's not something really that's there because you have to be there to really get to know it. At least, I mean, this is my perspective. I've never been to India, but I know that I have a lot of cliches in my head. And if you say India, I kind of can picture it, and it's always similar picture. So I like that Jeziorek is playing with this, and he's making it even more contrasty, colorful, even more crazy. And I think that's the way you can only work with this kind of cliches that we have around about the countries. So that's how it looks. It's a trip to 317 days to Mars. Really nice street photography, and really nicely designed, and yeah. So just to quickly show you as a kind of comparison, I will show another of his book that is called Message, and it's also the book. You can see that he's a photographer that doesn't want to just show the pictures in a very simple and easy way. So he always comes up with some kind of crazy idea. And this is a book that I don't really know if it starts from this side or from this side. I guess you can read it from both sides. And it's a book that one of the layer is a letter from 16th century, as I remember. It was first letter about India, about the customs in India that came to Poland. So it was kind of first information that shaped this image of the country in the heads of Polish people living in 16th century. So this is one layer, and the other layer is there are photographs that are always in a pair, and it's called the cross eye technique. So yes, it's called cross eye technique. So basically, if you cross your eyes, I tried, believe me, I tried yesterday for half an hour and I didn't manage to do this. If you cross your eyes in a specific way, you should see the 3D image. It's absolutely super difficult. I know it's possible. You have to train some, but it gives also this other really strange layer to reading this book, because even if you don't, if you try to do this, it's really absurd, and it's something that's really funny if you try to focus on one image for 10 minutes and cross your eyes and do a really strange thing with your view. And but the other thing is that you always look at the images in pairs, and also your brain starts to work really uh, uh, differently. And it's kind of this, this game when you try to figure out what are differences between two images, and you start to focus more on some details that are on the image, because your brain is trying to figure out what are the differences between these two images. So as you can see, Maciej Jeziorek likes to play with the way that he presents his projects, and that he presents India.
Okay, great. I'm still trying to do this thing with my eyes, and I still didn't succeed like Franek, but I will go with Łukasz Różnica book here. And because this is another example of well-executed form of photo book. And I mean, this is really the graphic elements here and the way he uses paper and print. Uh, it's like, for me, it's the definition of photo book, because it's also about to experiment with graphic elements and not only showcase photography. It's a book as a whole. Let's see. And wait a minute. And here comes the change. As you can see, you should feel the paper here, but he completely changed the print here.
So as you said, this is a book about Japan, but at the same time, Łukasz really highlights it that it's not about Japan. It's more about his the way he imagines Japan. He spent there, like, I think 2 months, yes, during the residency, and it's important to understand his approach, that he's not trying to show us the country, because after like a really short stay as his, you can only show some cliches about the country.
As you can see here, yeah, exactly.
So he decided to play with these cliches, no?
And that brings us also to this problem you mentioned before of photography and tourism and the line between this. And we don't want to be a bad tourist. But you can find, and I didn't even notice this, because this is the image of this very popular flower in Japan, which is everywhere on photos.
Cherry tree.
Yeah, and
Blossom cherry.
while I was browsing to this book, it's at the end, and I didn't notice it even. It was like totally normal for me, from the form of the nature he portraits here, and feelings, emotions, a little bit naive, but
yes. As you said, he's also like, this book is showing kind of maybe not a journey that much, but kind of a walk around the places he was. And so it starts, yeah, can I show?
yeah, of course.
So it starts from we start to walk, see the nature, which is, when you even said about this cherry blossom tree, it's probably not the proper way that the cherry tree should be presented. If you ask somebody from the Japan, it should be shown in a full blossom, no? And he kind of walk around the place that he was, kind of being lost, watching what's not maybe so perfect, where the city and the nature, they kind of mix and intertwine. And he also introduced here a bit a Japanese beliefs in ghosts, and at least how Łukasz, the photographer, he imagines this ghost. And this is this kind of approach to religion, where spirituality, where the ghosts are present in nature, in every place, in every moment. They are not something that is has its place in a church, or it's something that that's around, and it's more connected with even with daily life. So here everything a bit mixed, this sacrum and profanum, these two spheres. This is something that I think he's exploring a bit in this book. Even the city and the nature, it all kind of blends, mix, or he shows some kind of borders, but there are also very fluent borders between these two worlds. So this, as you said, he's using different papers and different formats to show it. No.
To make it stronger, and that makes the whole image complete then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's it.
Subterranean river,
Yeah.
if I spell it correctly.
Probably you can see the title here, but
We'll publish also the whole list of the books in the comments below this video, so you can click and go directly to the website of the photographer. We still have a lot of books and not a lot of time, so maybe I will go to the next one. And this is the book I told you that is made by two students of Fine Arts Academy in Łódź. Very beautiful book called No Man's Land. It's published in Poland, in Polish, by the school, or at least with the help of the school. But the guys produced additional booklet with the translation of the texts that are inside. And these texts are, at least for me, really important to get into this book, to understand it, and to also to go into the mood and this this story about being a bit lost in the country that you don't exactly know, but you have some connection with it, and of like exploring the land that doesn't belong to anybody. And these are the records done by Jan Kazimierz Barnaś and Wojciech Kamerys, and each of them presents a story, a visual essay from a different country. One is from Israel. This is the first one. As you can see, these are beautiful landscapes, very grainy, very dusty, and they have a lot of mood and this kind of poetic approach to documenting your journey and your feelings. And it's also very interesting to read the text that maybe they don't explain any story. They are also kind of fragments of some thoughts, emotions, or some meetings with other random people, or some small stories. But they create this kind of mood and this kind of story about going sideways, being this kind of bad tourist that doesn't follow what he should follow, but he wants to be lost in the place and follow other people, and even sometimes go in the place there's nothing there, or at least, but it opens some kind of reflection on the country of or itself. No, this is kind of this surrealistic ethnography where you are not only interested by the object that you are seeing, but also you are interested in your own emotion when you explore some area or some place and how it influences you. So these are two journeys, Israel, and the other one is the journey to Kazakhstan. Wojtek he's more he's spending more time in the city, but he also in a moment escapes from the city. So it also like mix these two perspectives, and he also kind of goes sideways and sometimes picturing things that are quite simple or mundane, or but there's a lot of poetic in this. So if you have the possibility to get this book, I highly recommend it to you, and also to read the beautiful texts that are inside, and yeah, give a lot to how this book works on us.
Okay, so shall we?
And
yeah.
So do you want to tell about some more?
Maybe a little brief introduce into this Karl Grigorov project, because it's interesting because first he made a huge album of this, like proper album of photography, and then he decided to work with this and prepare a zine, like you can see here. Why zine? Because it's way easier to give it to different places in Poland and use photography to speak about this project. Don't only make an album for our industry, for other artists and people involved, but to reach wider audience. Yeah, I believe it's a really interesting way. Also, there is another young artist from Poland. It's Janek Jurczak, and he even went a step further and took spreads similar to those and made an exhibition of them. Not to produce any new prints, because he was raising money for a problem in Ukraine. So this is very interesting for me when it comes to form. It's huge, as you can see. It almost takes over whole table. I won't dive deeper into this project because I don't know if we should speak something more about another book or just finish because it took us so long. Okay. So
yeah, we have time.
We have time.
2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so you want to some?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there are still 2 books that I didn't tell you about, or even 3 of them, and maybe I'll just show you this one first, very briefly, more as a comparison in a way, or to show some kind of evolution or maybe approach that develops from the book to book. As I told you, this is a book of the same author made like 1 or 2 years before. It was printed only in 10 copies, so it's kind of a dummy, something between the dummy and the ready book, or I would say more the book that artist made just more for himself to kind of close the project or some series of photos. And I think also I would say that it was a preparation to this another book, because you can find some similar motives.
Do a background here for you.
Yeah. So this book was made from the pictures from Italy, from the trip to Italy, and this is the same motive of being the bad tourist, no, of looking in the rock places. Instead of looking up, you look down on the people looking at something, no, or even if you look, you kind of this view is kind of changed or altered. It's not that important, no, more important is what's happening around, and also what's happening with your emotions and what's happening in between of this moment when you are this tourist on the street, how you experience the same idea of being um, somewhere in another place with somebody. So I think he also uses here some of the motives that we'll find later in Subterranean River, of kind of being lost in the nature, of going to this place where the city, where there's a border of the city and the nature, when these two worlds combine. And I think it shows this book was created not long before he went to Japan, so it's very interesting book to see as a kind of to see the development of the way of how the story can be told, and how the book uh, um, can be sequenced and edited. So it was kind of a thing that maybe a bit additional. But I want to go back to the book that that came into my hands just today, Echo Shades by Piotr Zbierski. And we were talking about books that were about very specific or problems or very specific places. This is a bit different. It talks about the connection of man with nature, about shamanism, about spirituality, in this very, very broad understanding of what spirituality is, going to the roots of this connection with gods or deities, or even the connection with underworld in a way. So this book was created from the long-term project that Piotr carries in very different locations, from Africa, Mongolia, but also Poland, Baltic countries, India, Indonesia. So basically, he traveled around the world to document people who live still with this really strong connection to the nature, to the natural medicine, and also to document rituals connected with death, as you will see. I don't know if I'll find it in the book. Yeah, this is from Thailand or Indonesia.
Indonesia.
I think Indonesia, where there's one of the tribe has this holidays that like every 2 or 3 years they dig out the dead people from the grave, their dead relatives. They spend then some time with them. They dress them. They take care over the mummified bodies, and then after these 2-3 days, they put them back into the grave. And this is the way to commemorate the dead people, but also to stay in the connection with them. Like the death is not something that should be hidden. It's something that should be in a way celebrated, because it's a destiny of everyone. So it's really beautiful book, as you can see, you won't find here any descriptions about the place or the dates. Its goal is to give you more general view about this topic, and not to focus on some specific geographic area, but more to show that there are some things that connect many tribes, many people around the world, and this is this approach and connection with nature, with the world of ghosts, and what I really like in this specific book is the usage of this transparent material. I don't know how to exactly call it in English, but it gives me. I know that also for the project, Piotr is doing a lot of 8mm movies, and I think it's a way to give this a bit this cinematographic form, or a bit relate to this 8mm material that's part of the project, and I think it worked really well. I really like how he played with the cover. He used very simple material, linen, and the linen is also connected with it's a plant used for healing. So I like the simplicity of the cover of the book, and how the pictures are edited, and how the story or maybe the topic unfolds in the book, and how it sucks us into the world of spirituality around the world. And I think we'll finish with this. Yes, or you want to add something? This is, as we said, just a small sneak peek, a small selection from our bigger selection of books that will be presented in Nida, in Toulouse, and in Kaunas. And we really would like to invite you to observe our Polish Paradise events. Maybe if you have the possibility, it's not really far from Riga to Nida. I did this trip last year, and maybe join us for the photographic symposium. We'll be also talking more about the books, the artists that come with us. We have wonderful 6 Polish artists that present their work inside this installation. And yeah, hopefully we'll see each other maybe in Nida, Toulouse, or Kaunas.
Yeah, our next stop is in Nida, and we hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation from Riga Photo Month